What creepy things have happened to you in remote places? I've been working in the oil and gas industry in the far north of Canada for a few years now. The silence of a snowy forest in the dead of night, 100 kilometers away from anything, is pretty spooky. But the scariest thing was when I came to the trailer one night during the night shift, sat down to rest, and suddenly heard a terribly loud, drawn-out scream outside. I looked up in fear and saw a huge dark figure with hands reaching for the window. It was just awful. I don't know how I didn't die of fear. I grabbed a flashlight and pointed it at the window. It turned out to be a large moose, and the hands were long antlers on its head. It came to the porch for some leftover food, but got its foot tangled in some construction debris. Your like and subscription will really help my channel. I was on guard duty at Camp Phoenix on the outskirts of Kabul in 2011. It's a 12-hour shift, and it started at 7 p.m. Around 2 a.m., I could hear what sounded like footsteps running all around the guard tower. Promptly set my ass hairs on end, so I pull out my night vision and pray that it's some kids or something. No one was visible through the fence, but then a howl pierced the silence of the night. Holding the gun, I look over the fence, and there, I'm not lying, there must have been 2 or 3 pairs of dogs humping each other at the same time. It's hard to see, but I even took a photo. It's in the description. I guide people through the tundra and mountains and protect them from polar bears. Once I guided tourists along an old abandoned route. The area around there is almost deserted, but sometimes hunters go there. In the evening, we wanted to set up camp in a clearing, but we saw a snowman totem with deer antlers sticking out of his head. It was deformed, full of bullet holes and quite creepy, and there was a rabbit hanging in a noose on a tree nearby. There was no time to look for another place, so we slept there. Nothing terrible happened, but it was unpleasant. One night, I was working on a ship sailing near Norway, and it happened to be my first night ever seeing northern lights. I can't believe how awesome that was. It made the sky clear, made the night look like it was dusk. We were able to see clearly for miles. Few buddies and I hit the roof at 1 a.m. just to gaze at it. Suddenly, an hour later, a big white spotlight shines at us. We were near land, but where the spotlight was above the water, and it wasn't low enough to be on a ship. This was very high up. It shined on us for about 15-20 seconds. Once the light turned off, we looked to see what it was. Saw nothing. No trace of an aircraft or anything. Couple minutes go by and the same light shined on us. This time it was on the other side of our vessel, above mountains. Still unable to see what it was. We all saw it. We all have never seen any aircrafts hovering above these waters, especially at 2 a.m. We didn't understand what it was. It was creepy, like in UFO movies. Anyways, that was one of the weirder things to happen out on the ocean. Try Googling for Hessdalen lights. Hessdalen is an area in Norway where similar light phenomena occur. They were first documented in 1981, and no one found out what they are or where they come from. I used to work at a Boy Scout summer camp. Every week, I had to take a big group of campers to a secluded spot for their wilderness survival badge, where they had to build a shelter out of sticks, leaves, etc., and sleep in it overnight. On this one night, all the campers had made their shelters, we had cooked dinner, and were all just sitting around the campfire. It was getting late, maybe 11, so I sent all the campers to their shelters for the night and started cleaning up the fire. That's when we heard in the distance what sounded like church bells. They were pretty faint, but myself and my fellow staffers could definitely hear them. They went on for about 30 minutes, ringing every 30 seconds or so. We were all a little creeped out, as there were no churches or towns within 20 miles of us. After the bells stopped, though, the singing started. It was too faint to hear the words, but it sounded like church choir music, but a lot of people, and a lot more enthusiastic. The singing went on for well over an hour, sometimes quieting down until we almost couldn't hear it, sometimes getting so loud we thought it was getting closer. All of the campers were super creeped out, but I lied to them, telling them there was a church service going on in camp and that there was nothing to be scared of. Eventually, at almost 1 a.m., the singing stopped. I found out a few days later that there had been a large KKK rally only a few miles away that night, and that's what we had heard. Spent a summer doing conservation work out in the absolute middle of nowhere in Wyoming. Was part of a crew that would spend 2 weeks camping in remote places to do manual labor in places machines couldn't get to. For this story, we were building new hiking, biking trails in the back portion of a designated wilderness area in a high-altitude desert. This means that the nearest civilization was a 2-hour car ride to a town of 41 people in a sandy soil area where tracks last forever. It was the middle of our stint during the early part of the night where everyone else had gone to bed, but I stayed up to read, so maybe 11:30 or so. So my headlamp was probably the only light on in a 40-mile radius. Suddenly, I hear footsteps walking around our camp and head towards the tents from where I was in the community tent. That sound immediately put me on edge as I felt the hair on my arms raise and my adrenaline spike. I recall thinking to myself that 2 things are very wrong, since the person was not using a light to see and the footsteps were not coming towards me from the tents. Rather, it was the opposite. Within the 4 seconds, it took me to drop my book, get up, and turn the corner of the tent to cast my light on the sleeping tents. The sound had stopped, but I saw tracks in dirt before me. Looked like they came from one end of camp. Looked into my tent, walked through the sleeping tents, and kept going out of camp again. The rest of my crew ended up waking up and asking me what was going on from inside their tents. After explaining what I found, they all got up to look at the boot prints in the dirt. The size of the boot print was larger than anyone else's in the camp. Never saw or heard anything more after that night. New video every day. Your like and subscription will really help my channel.